Chapter 1. Riders in the Mist. They come with the fog, not with the sun, nor beneath starlight, but in the hour between, when the sky is neither day nor night, and the earth itself forgets to breathe. That is when the hooves fall. That is when the air cracks like bone. That is when the hunt rides. Ask the shepherd who lost his flock in the blue mountains. Ask the Skellige widow who woke to find the sea frozen and her husband gone. Ask the child who stared too long at the tree line and never spoke again. They will tell you stories, whispers, dreams turned brittle with fear, of riders without faces, of armor that drinks the light, of laughter that sounds like ice cracking over a corpse, of the wild hunt. There is no village untouched by their name, no tongue that does not twist to speak it with caution. Wraiths of the sky, specters of frost, riders of Ragnar Rug, dozens of names, one fear. Children are told to stay in bed when the winds rise. Sailors leave one coin out, just in case. Old women burn pine needles at dusk and trace protective runes into the doors. But still they ride, always distant, always silent, until they are not. The legends differ, as all legends do. Some claim the hunt rides from beyond the veil of death, collecting souls to carry to a spectral realm. Others say they are the omen of war, appearing only before kingdoms fall or plagues begin. In Mahakam, dwarves speak of the frozen riders, who once thundered through their tunnels, shattering forges with a breath of frost. In Zeracania, tales tell of ash horses that leave tracks in deserts where no snow has fallen in millennia. And in Temeria, elders speak of a village that vanished entirely. Nothing left but a ring of hoarfrost around blackened ground. No prints, no blood, just silence. Those who survive do not remember, or wish they didn't, but behind myth there is truth. There is always truth. It begins not in our world, but another, Aen Elle, a world of powerful elves who mastered the magic of travel between spheres, a world not unlike ours, but older, sharper, unkind. The elves of that realm are not the kind you meet in Broccolone or wandering trade roads. They are colder, more ancient, and above all, they remember. They remember the conjunction of the spheres. They remember what they lost. And they remember us. To them, we are lesser. Accidents of cosmic spill, flesh without purpose, but flesh that can be used. The wild hunt is not a random specter, it is a force, a cavalry of elite riders from Aen Elle, led by a name carved into every nightmare, Eredin Break Glas, the king of the hunt. He who walks between worlds, he whose eyes burn with hunger not for gold or glory, but for slaves, for chaos, for the unraveling of thin walls between worlds. They ride not to haunt, they ride to take, to steal away the gifted, the sensitive, the touched, those with elder blood, those who can open doors that were meant to remain closed. Once they rode more often, when the veil was thinner, when the scars between spheres still bled magic. In those times, kings sent whole armies against them, and none returned. Mages tried to track them. Some succeeded. None survived long enough to map their routes. It is said that only a few things deter the hunt: sacred stones from the elder races, powerful druidic wards, and in rare cases, witchers. But even witchers speak their name carefully. And none, not even Geralt of Rivia, forget the chill left behind in the air when hooves thunder through fog. In some villages, people speak of a red mist that comes first, a stillness, no birdsong, no breeze. Then, faint hoofbeats on frozen ground, not from the road, from the sky. And if you are very unlucky, the stars vanish entirely, replaced by a floating rift in the firmament, through which the hunt descends. There are patterns, the scholars say, astronomical alignments, sudden dips in temperature, mass streams of wolves running through snow. But none of these help when they come. They do not bargain, they do not speak, they take. Yet there are survivors, not many, but enough to tell the tale. One man claimed to see their faces, bone white beneath their helmets, elven features, but wrong, like statues made too perfect, too cold. Another spoke of a scream, not heard with ears, but in the blood, as if your body remembered death before it arrived. A woman in Sintra was found days after her family vanished. She had frostbite in midsummer. Her hair had turned white. She did not speak, save for one phrase: "The stars are wrong." And so the hunt rides on. Not a ghost story, not a curse, but something worse, a memory of war, a reminder that our world is not alone, and that the door they used once can open again. They are not gone, they are not resting, they are waiting.
Chapter 2. The King Beneath the Mask. Before the hooves thundered, before the stars trembled, before his name made even mages flinch, he was simply Eredin. A commander, a loyalist, an Aen Elle elf bred in the frost of another world, one untouched by humans, ruled by order and spellcraft. His armor had not yet darkened, his crown had not yet frozen, but his eyes, they were already cold. Among his people, Eredin Breac Glas was known as the Sage of Blades, a tactician without flaw. He served the White Frost King Oberon Mursatak, whose reign spanned centuries and whose ambition reached across worlds. The Aen Elle were not content with isolation. They wanted control, and Eredin would be their spear point. He was tasked with leading an elite cavalry, a spectral division capable of slipping between spheres. Not just scouts, not just soldiers, harbingers. Beings that would ride through the thin cracks between realities, locate vessels of power, and extract them, quietly, surgically, without alerting the fabric of the multiverse. He succeeded. Too well. With every raid, his riders grew bolder, faster, less careful. They began to leave signs: scorched frost, shattered dreams, memories that did not belong to those who carried them. People began to remember the riders, and so the myth was born, the Wild Hunt. In time, Eredin grew dissatisfied. The missions were precise, but the vision limited. Why should they hide in the gaps between stars? Why borrow power when they could seize it? He saw the human world as a wounded animal, disjointed, divided, and slow. Kingdoms rose and fell like sparks in the wind, but the humans had something dangerous: elder blood. Buried in their lineages by accident, mutation, or fate were those with the gift to open the doors between worlds, the gift to collapse the distance between what is and what could be. To Eredin, they were not to be protected, they were to be harvested. He began acting without permission. Small raids at first, hidden from Oberon's court. disguised as drills or anomalies. His trusted lieutenants, Imlerith, Caranthir, Nithral, joined him, each one hand-picked, each bound by loyalty, fear, or vision. They tested new magics, illusions woven from void light, portals drawn in the air with silent runes, riders who left no shadow. And when they came for those with elder blood, they no longer returned through clean gates. They tore their way back. Magic screamed, worlds bled. Oberon took notice. At first, the king confronted Eredin, a closed-door tribunal, words no mortal ear would hear. But the rumors spread, of Eredin's fury, of Oberon's caution. The king did not banish him, he needed the hunt. But he saw the fire behind the commander's eyes. Eredin did not wait to be deposed. He poisoned Oberon, not with blade or brew, but with hope. He whispered promises of elder blood. He led the king on an honor hunt across spheres to find Lara Doran's heir, a child who could open every door. During the journey, Oberon weakened. The transition between worlds damaged even elven flesh. Eredin offered him a potion. The king drank. He never woke again. No crown passed hands. No ceremony was held. But when the next hunt rode, it was Eredin who led them. He took the name King of the Hunt. He reforged their image, not a secret order, but a terror, a prophecy incarnate. His armor darkened into void metal, his helm mirrored a skull, his blade bled stars. The wild hunt no longer moved in silence. It became thunder. Some say he was corrupted by the spaces between worlds, that his soul froze while drifting too long in the veil. Others say he was always thus, that power only peeled back the mask. But what is certain is this. Eredin began to search, not for just any vessel, but for Ciri, the child of the elder blood, the one who could burn paths across dimensions. To Eredin, she was destiny, a key, a weapon, a throne, and nothing, not time, not distance, not Geralt of Rivia, would stop him. He ordered entire regions scouted. His lieutenants pulled dreams from the minds of the gifted. Ghostly riders tested gates by moonlight. Wherever Ciri passed, the fog thickened. The sky whispered her name. In Velen, people woke screaming of hooves on rooftops. In Skellige, stars vanished for minutes at a time. In Novigrad, a tower wept frost. And in the mountains north of Kedwin, a village woke to find every mirror cracked and a single feather made of ice. The hunt was drawing near. But Eredin was no longer a general. He was a relic, suspended between memory and obsession. Each raid drained him. Each gate opened wore his soul thinner. He had traded life for pursuit, and even among his riders, whispers grew. What happens when the hunt ends? They feared the answer. Because Eredin's path was not conquest, it was extinction. He believed that by capturing the child of the elder blood, he could save his people, that she would open the gates to worlds yet untouched, that the Aen Elle would flourish again. But the truth was harsher. He was no savior. He was a shadow in pursuit of something no longer his to claim. And the wild hunt, those terrible riders in the mist,
were no longer instruments of war. They were echoes, riding toward the end of all things. Chapter 3. Riders of Frost and Flame. The wild hunt was never just one rider. It was a storm, a formation, a message written across the sky in hoofbeats and silence. And at the heart of that message were 3 shadows, each bound to Eredin, each terrible in their own way. They were not merely warriors, they were aspects. Where Eredin was the mind, the will, the vision, Imlerith was the body. Caranthir was the frost. Nithral was the silence. Imlerith, the butcher in black. He was the first to follow Eredin into exile, and the last to speak when others whispered doubt. Towering, armored in steel thicker than any forge could birth, Imlerith was not subtle. He did not glide like the others. He crushed. They say his great hammer had once been a cathedral bell, reforged with blood and bones. His blows could split men like firewood, and his footfalls left craters where he walked. But he was no mere brute. Imlerith was a tactician in carnage, a general of chaos. He led the hunt's most violent incursions, when the goal was not extraction, but devastation. Entire villages erased, watchtowers shattered, elven relics stolen, magical defenses cracked open like old glass. He delighted in suffering. Yet in his own realm, the world of Aen Elle, he was revered, a decorated veteran of countless battles, a symbol of loyalty. It was said that only 2 voices could command him, Eredin's and the scream of war.
Caranthir, the Lord of Frost. Caranthir Ar-Faemio was called the Navigator, the hunt's guide between worlds. His magic was ancient, deep, tied not just to ice, but to void, the cold between stars. While others opened portals with runes or signs, Caranthir felt the threads between realities like a spider in a frozen web. He could slip through cracks others didn't even know existed. He rarely spoke. He rarely needed to. His arrival was heralded by falling temperatures, hoarfrost along window panes, and the sudden stillness of time. When Caranthir appeared, snow fell upward, and stars flickered out. He wore robes beneath his armor, robes inked with constellations not from our sky. His staff was not a weapon, but a tuning fork of dimensions, resonating with unseen forces. In battle, he was untouchable, not through speed, but through distortion. Arrows curved away, blades met only mist. Even seasoned sorcerers could not track him, and those who tried found their minds rearranged. He was not born to war. He was born to break the rules that kept worlds apart. And for Eredin, he was invaluable, because without Caranthir, the hunt would be just a myth trapped in one place. Nithral, the Pale Executioner. Where Imlerith brought fire and Caranthir brought frost, Nithral brought the end, quiet, methodical, without flourish. He was death in form. Few saw him and lived. Those who did spoke of armor like black shale, eyes that pulsed with dull light, and a gait that made no sound, even on gravel. His sword was simple, no runes, no glow, but it passed through shields as if they were paper. Nithral was the hunt's cleanser, sent when something had to be erased without echo, a scholar who knew anatomy better than most surgeons. His strikes were surgical, his raids left nothing, no blood, no bodies, only empty homes and scorched soil. He rarely joined the main cavalry. Instead, he rode ahead, a ghost before the ghosts. Together, they were the triumvirate of dread. When they rode side by side, reality bent, magic flared and faltered. Even the bravest of witchers would not stand ground if all three appeared on the horizon. But they were not equals, and they were not friends. Each served Eredin, yes, but for different reasons. Imlerith, out of loyalty and belief. Caranthir, for access to forbidden forces. Nithral, for reasons unknown. Perhaps habit, perhaps penance, perhaps the thrill of silence after screams. Some say they once had lives in Aen Elle society. That Imlerith was a war hero turned executioner. That Caranthir was once a stargazer in the Tower of Mirrors. That Nithral had no name until Eredin gave him one. Others say they were made, not born, forged from the worst dreams of the conjunction. But the truth is lost. Because they chose the hunt. And once you choose the hunt, you are no longer part of history. You become a warning. Their movements were rarely random. Caranthir scouted gates. Nithral identified key targets. Imlerith broke through. Their raids were not about numbers, but surgical extraction, children with signs of the elder blood, sorcerers meddling too close to veil magic, artifacts imbued with gateway resonance. To most, these attacks were nightmares, but to the hunt, they were harvest. In Skellige, they took a girl who dreamed of cities she had never seen. In Redania, they claimed a blade made from meteoric ore that vibrated when portals opened nearby. In the north, they found a druid who had once spoken with the wild ones and silenced him forever. And always, always, they searched for the girl with silver hair. She was the end game, the door, the flame they were willing to chase into oblivion. But even the hunt has limits. Their power strained the veil. Their magic left wounds. And those wounds did not heal. Portals began to open without command. Worlds bled into each other. Madness spread like frostbite through the lands. And the triumvirate, once precise, grew reckless. Each step they took brought them closer, not to conquest, but to collapse. They did not stop, could not, because to stop would be to admit the truth, that they were not gods, not kings, not fate, just three riders chasing a star that had already fallen. And behind them, Eredin rode on. Chapter 4. The Girl Who Could Open Worlds. Before the storms, before the hunt, before kingdoms burned in the wake of hooves, there was a child. Not a warrior, not a queen, just a girl. Her name was Cirilla Fiona Ellen Rhiannon, but to those who truly understood what she was, She was the key. She was born in a world already breaking. The North bled war, the South burned with ambition. Magic rippled unpredictably, still echoing the aftershocks of the conjunction of the spheres. And somewhere in that chaos, a bloodline stirred. One older than the stones, older than the elves themselves. The blood of Lara Dorren. The blood of elder origins. A song woven into flesh, not just powerful, but reactive, alive, drawn to thresholds, drawn to crossroads between what is, what was, and what could be. Ciri did not choose this. The gift came before memory, the path before desire. The elves of Aen Elle knew of the blood. They had tried long ago to control it, to preserve it in Lara Dorren. But Lara fell in love with a human, and the line fractured. Diluted, yes, but not destroyed. It hid, skipped generations, waited, and in Ciri it woke. Not as a whisper, but as a scream across realities. At first it came in dreams, visions of places she'd never seen, deserts under twin suns, cities in the clouds, forests where time flowed backward. Then came the shifts, moments when fear or rage cracked the world open like glass, and she vanished through the splinters. To those around her it was magic. To the wild hunt, it was a beacon. Caranthir felt her presence first, a ripple in the dimensional web, a light on a map with no landmarks. Eredin did not hesitate. He gave the order. Find her, take her, use her. Because with Ciri, they could open the path to any world. Aen Elle would no longer be bound to a fading realm. They would conquer freely, feed endlessly. And so the hunt began in earnest. They chased her across worlds, across battlefields and burned villages, across forests where the trees screamed and mountains that bled starlight. They never stopped. And she never truly escaped, only delayed them. Always one step ahead, never far enough. She was a child, then a fugitive, then a sword-bearer, but the hunt didn't see her as a person. To them, she was a vessel, a tool, a lock to be turned. Only Geralt saw the girl, not the power, not the blood, just Ciri. In time, she learned to fight, to harness the power, to step between worlds not in fear, but with intent. She met creatures beyond comprehension, wandered worlds untouched by human eyes. She saw what the hunt feared most, that she could choose not to open doors, but to close them. One night, beneath a sky without stars, she stood alone. Snow fell around her in reverse. A rift widened above her, howling, jagged, alive. The hunt emerged, armor like shadow, swords like frozen flame. Eredin stepped forward. He didn't threaten, he didn't plead. He promised. "You were meant for this," he said. "You are the end of chains, the beginning of forever. Come with us." She looked up at the rift, then down at her hand. She closed it into a fist, and the portal shattered like ice on stone. But the hunt did not stop. They came again, and every time she grew stronger. Not because of the blood, but because of her will. The elder blood was power, yes, but it was not destiny. Ciri was not a pawn, not a prophecy to fulfill. She was a question, What happens when the one meant to be used refuses? What happens when the key locks the gate instead? She learned to control her gift, not through spells, but through focus, through pain, through memory, through the hands of those who loved her and the eyes of those she'd saved. She was more than blood. She was story, and stories once told cannot be owned. The hunt pressed harder. Caranthir bent time to corner her. Nithral silenced entire forests to flush her out. Imlerith burned villages to force her hand, but still she ran, until she stopped and turned and fought. The girl became a storm, not of fire, not of frost, but of freedom. She tore through dimensions, not to escape, but to limit, to seal, to cut the veins the hunt used to bleed the worlds. Eredin reached for her, one last time, and she was gone, like light before thunder. In the end, the hunt found nothing. No prize, no vessel, no victory. Only a trail of doors slammed shut, and behind them, a girl who once was a child, now a legend. She is still out there, they say, not hiding, but watching, waiting.
Because the gates can always open again. And when they do, the girl who could open worlds will be the one who knows how to close them. Chapter 5. When the Frost Cracks. No storm lasts forever. Even the wildest wind burns itself out. Even the sea returns to stillness. And even a hunt, no matter how relentless, must one day end. Not with a roar, but with a fracture. That was how the wild hunt began to die. Not with battle, not with blood, but with cracks. It started with the gates. Where once Caranthir could bend the veil like silk, now it fought him. Threads of reality frayed unpredictably, portals became unstable, journeys that once took moments now dragged through frozen voids that screamed with forgotten voices. Once the hunt danced between worlds, now it tore through them, and each tear bled. Time no longer obeyed. On one raid, the hunt rode into a realm ruled by twilight and found days passed in seconds. They returned to Aen Elle, burned, aged, changed. On another, Imlerith struck down a line of defenders in a village and turned to see the same men rise again, caught in a temporal loop. His blade no longer obeyed momentum. His limbs ached with a cold that was not his own. The frost no longer spread on command. It cracked. The lieutenants felt it. Caranthir's hand trembled when shaping runes. Imlerith's armor, once invincible, dulled and split. Nithral vanished for weeks at a time without report, returning quieter than before, even by his own standards. They did not speak of it aloud, but each knew the hunt was fraying. And Eredin, he refused to see it. He burned more power, pushed harder. He demanded longer jumps, deeper incursions, bolder strikes. He began to use forbidden glyphs, twisting space in ways even the elves had once sealed. He drew magic from the spaces between spaces, fuel with no name, no echo, only cost. Each raid took more from him. His crown grew darker, his voice more distant. Sometimes even his own steed flinched at his approach. The other elves began to whisper, not just the hunt but the court of Aen Elle, where once Eredin was respected, now he was feared. Where once his vision was inspiration, now it was obsession. Some began to question. Had the hunt become a curse? A myth so deeply believed it had no choice but to fulfill itself?
Then came the failed raid at the shores of Yrda. They arrived to take a child, gifted, sensitive, with a trace of elder resonance. But the portal collapsed before the rear guard crossed through. 6 riders lost. The screams were heard even through the gate. The next jump brought them into a dead realm, a mirror of their own world, frozen in stasis. Time refused to move. Half the cavalry aged years in a single heartbeat. One rider blinked and forgot his own name. They returned, battered, shaken, and for the first time in memory the hunt did not ride the next full moon. Imlerith confronted Eredin. No one knows the words they shared, only that Imlerith rode alone the next night, cleaving through monsters not for cause, but for control. His blows shattered cliffs. He returned covered in ash and said nothing. Caranthir stopped responding to summons for days at a time. Nithral no longer wore his sigil. The triumvirate remained, but they were no longer one body. They were three fractures held together by momentum. Still, Eredin would not yield. He claimed the end was near. He could feel her, Cirilla, stronger than ever. Every ripple she made called to him. He believed her power would renew the hunt, restore stability, give them dominion again. He did not see the truth. The more he hunted her, the more she resisted. And the more she resisted, the more she reshaped the paths he relied on. She had learned to close what he could only open. Her will was not a gate, it was a blade, and it was turning back on him. The hunt grew erratic. They appeared in the wrong places, took the wrong targets. Survivors increased. Where once the sight of the wild hunt meant certain death, now stories spread of towns that drove them back with spell and steel. A rumor rose. The hunt can be stopped. And in that rumor was poison, because even fear, once challenged, can fade. In time, their own world began to change. The palace of Tir Nalia grew cold, not from winter, but from silence. Elven lords turned their faces away when Eredin passed. No songs were sung of the hunt, no honors bestowed, only shadows, only memory. In the old days, the wild hunt had ridden to dominate, then to survive. Now they rode only out of habit, because if they stopped, they would have to face what they had become, not gods, not saviors, but echoes. And echoes cannot choose silence. Some say Caranthir planned to defect, to open a final gate and vanish. Others claim Imlerith sought to challenge Eredin for command. One tale says Nithral buried his blade in a lake of shattered time, whispering a vow never to draw it again. The hunt did not die all at once. It died in pieces, with each failed raid, with each empty return, with each look of doubt behind a visor once worn with pride. And yet, even as it crumbled, they still rode. Not because they could win, but because it was all they knew. And in the wake of their hooves, the frost no longer claimed the land. It melted, and what lay beneath was not ice, but truth. Chapter 6. The Last Ride. There comes a night when even the stars seem tired, when wind no longer howls but sighs, when frost forgets to cling, and the snow falls not like blades, but like ash. On such a night, even the wild hunt must stop and listen to silence. It was the end, though they would not call it that. They would say it was a summons, a final raid, a path not yet walked. But in truth, it was the last ride, Eredin stood, alone, on the edge of the realm, his steed still and restless beneath him. Behind, only a handful of riders remained, faces once obscured by myth, now pale with exhaustion. They had ridden so long, they had forgotten what it felt like to stand still. The sky above them cracked, thin and fragile. A rift opened, and through it, once more, they chased her. She was no longer running. Ciri stood in the snow, sword lowered, breath steady, eyes clear, not defiant, not afraid, but resolved. Behind her, no army, no gates, no traps, just a girl and a choice. Eredin dismounted. For the first time in decades, he did not speak with command, but with memory. "You were born for this," he said. She tilted her head. "No, I was born."
"That is all." He stepped closer. The wind around him slowed, as if unsure whether to flee or bow. His armor no longer gleamed, his crown had cracked, but his voice still carried the weight of other worlds. "Do you know what I've seen?" he asked. "Civilizations made of crystal, oceans that rise to the stars, forests that remember names whispered to them once." She nodded. "And what did you leave behind in those places?" He said nothing, because he remembered. Fire, collapse, fear. "You would waste this power," he said. "Hide it, bury it, close what was meant to be opened." "I would protect it," she answered, "even from you." He drew his blade, not in rage, but in ritual, a final gesture, a story's ending that had been written too long ago. She raised hers, not as a warrior, but as a keeper. They crossed blades only once, and in that strike something broke, not steel, not will, but the purpose of the hunt itself. The rift behind them pulsed, wild, unstable. Caranthir, watching from beyond, felt its pattern unravel. It no longer obeyed his command. Imlerith, though long absent, would have recognized the shift, not defeat, but release. Nithral had not come at all, and that said more than words could. Eredin staggered, not from a wound, but from understanding. He looked at Ciri, not as a gate, not as a tool, but as a soul that had chosen not to become like him. "You could have ruled," he whispered. "I chose to live," she replied. He fell to one knee, not in surrender, but in exhaustion. The crown slipped from his head. It struck the ground and shattered, not loudly, but like a whisper being forgotten. The frost around him began to melt, not by magic, but because the spell was broken. Ciri turned from him and walked away. She did not look back, because there was nothing more to see, no hunt, no storm, only mourning. The riders who remained felt the shift, the tether to their king, to their mission, to their very being. It frayed, unraveled, vanished. One by one they dismounted. Some dropped their blades, others wept. One simply lay down in the snow and did not rise. The hunt was over, not slain, not defeated, but released. In the years that followed, stories changed. The wild hunt became less a warning and more lesson. Bards sang not of terror, but of obsession, of chasing what should not be possessed, of roads walked too long. Children no longer trembled at the sound of hooves in mist. They listened and wondered. Some say Eredin still walks between worlds, not as a king, but as a wanderer. No sword, no name, just a man searching for a place where he no longer has to chase anything. Others believe the hunt will return one day, when the veils grow thin again, when someone forgets what was learned. But not yet. Not while she watches. Ciri, the girl who could open worlds,
chose instead to protect them. She became not a queen nor a tyrant, but a shadow against the storm, a memory that reminds the stars to stay in their place, and so the frost does not spread, the portals do not tear, and the sky remains quiet. And in that silence, a horse's hoof falls, only once, and then no more.